Hey y'all, Nikki here, and you are listening to the How to Be Magical podcast. And this week's episode is very special, very near and dear to me. I am so excited to introduce this guest. The title of this episode is Glam, Goddesses, and Y2K, the cinematic world of hip hop and hoodoo. And I would like to introduce my guest this week, Ace of Hip Hop and Hoodoo. Ace, welcome to How to Be Magical. How are you?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm doing so good. I'm actually like really excited to be here. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for you to be here. As I was saying before, and as I've said many times online, like I'm a huge fan of you and your work and your perspective. As a hoodoo, as a filmmaker, I truly like your vision. Your artistic vision is so dope, and I'm just like so excited that we're talking because you're a very unique guest. Like all of my guests are unique. I will say that everybody that I've interviewed is always coming from different walks of life. But I feel like you are truly one of a kind, and I'm very happy to have you here, and I'm very
Thank
excited
you.
to talk and get all your business today. So just let's just all just start with the basics. Just who are you, where you from, and like what is your family's history with hoodoo?
All right. So I'm Ace Blackwood, popularly known online as Hip Hop and Hoodoo. Back in the day, I would often like change my name and my AKA. So I have like 1,000 AKAs, like the Slim Reaper, the Ooga Booga, like the Hoodoo Regina George. Like I've had a lot of AKAs, but formerly Ace Blackwood. Um, I'm known online just for everything that crosses over with anything that has to do with like hoodoo, African American history, Black history with spiritualism, fashion, perfumery, jewelry, women's history, the history of witchcraft, mythology, folklore, cryptids, all that gorgeous stuff. I'm from Ohio. I've been learning as of late, I guess everyone's from Ohio. So I'm from Ohio, Midwest represent. And my family's history with hoodoo is actually pretty unique. I like to talk about it for the simple fact that I don't have any recent family that has done hoodoo. And for me personally, I don't know if many people know this now, but I'm in and out of the US. So when I sort of got okay, so growing up I grew up Christian, right? Like half the girls in the world, right? And I grew up Christian, very very much in the church, Bible study, Bible camp, youth group, Sunday, every Sunday, very much studied, right? But for me personally, I never had trauma with the faith. It just never connected. And every time I would see girls in the church like weep or put their hands in the sky, I always was like, what are they getting that I'm not? Because I know they feel something, but I feel so like nothing, right? And one day my mother had to preach on the preaching team, and that was the first time that I kind of saw my mother in the process of like doing research. And I always found it interesting because as she was preparing for her sermons and seminars, she would always do a research on the economic, cultural, and political context of the Bible book to understand what was spoken about. And that's when so many common themes and stories that I was used to hearing from the Bible, my mother was like, well, this means something because in this context, this what was going on. So it's not that people shouldn't do this, it's that in this context, this was a problem. So for the first time ever, when my mother would preach at the church or speak, that was probably no shade, the only time I was ever locked in church. Because I was like, whether we believe in spirituality or not, like she's talking about geography and history and dates and names. And I'm like, this is really food. And when I got to like my mid-teen years, that's when I started wanting to do, I thought I hated history. As we can see, that was a lie. I just realized I didn't like the history I was learning. So I kind of got interested because I live in a very multicultural city. When I've traveled outside of the US, I've lived around a lot of multicultural areas and cities. So you see like the Thai and the Chinese and the Japanese people, they have certain altars and shrines and temples, you see a lot of Arabs, sometimes they'll have like mystic charms. And I was just like, I know that the monotheistic religion is not the only religion out there and it's not the first. So what is our equivalent as Black people? Like the lucky cats at the nail salon, like what's that for us? Because I know we got something. Like Black people always is doing something. Like we have something. And that's when I just was like, you know what? I want to dive into African American just history and superstitions. that's when I low key just got snatched into hoodoo. I don't know how. I think I fell into one of the hoodoo Facebook groups, and we all know about the tea behind that. So I collectively feel everybody rolling their eyes, like we all had to go through there, and that's when I got dived into hoodoo, and that I would genuinely just say like that's when the spirits kind of took me because I was accessing a bunch of information and meeting people that like on a regular day I never could. Um, so in my recent bloodline, in my recent family, I'm the first who I would say is kind of like reawakening this, because all my elders that are living in the church, they see this as something very bad. I've some of my family are very aware that I do this, but I have other family members that they would have no clue because they see this as something very bad, and that's not gonna stop me. But it's in doing this that I would like to call it a reawakening because the deeper I get into my practice, if I have conversations with my family members, they're going to be like, that's so interesting that you say that word. Because when I was young, we heard that word. Or when I started, when I got into hoodoo, one of the first things that actually got my attention was Anansi because when I was young, I had a storybook of Anansi the Spider. And so I saw that and I raced to my room to get the book. And I'm like, wait, it's the same girl. And I learned all about Anansi, Aunt Nancy, the archetype of spiders and how it connects African Americans, people in the Caribbean, and people in Ghana. Like we all have that same figure. And in speaking with like people in my family, they're gonna be like, yeah, like we would listen to a lot of Anansi stories, a lot of Br'er Rabbit stories. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like, no one else talks about this. This is part of the culture that survived. So I like being open about the fact that I didn't grow up from a hoodoo background nor hoodoo elders from like a recent first two generation standpoint, but it's there in the family. And for people who are like me, we're the ones who are going to have to kind of like wake it up for our blood. So that was the whole me thing.
No, that's so it's just interesting that you mentioned like your mom like watching her research for her sermons, and that's something that I think that a lot of people um they discount. Like, Christianity does have its pitfalls. I get that. Like, I get everybody has left. People are leaving the church in droves, and I get that. But I think that there are some people who could truly benefit from just like the historical aspects of things. Like, get into the history of why certain things are the way they are, and then you'll be able to better understand the messaging that's coming behind it. And I think that goes with a multitude of traditions, right? Like, every tradition has some type of historical context that you can draw from and understand what's happening now and like connect those dots. But I think that like that's where like people get very dogmatic when they lose context of the history and they lose context of what was happening at that time. And like I grew up understanding that like the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran are just like three newspapers reporting
Pretty much, yeah.
reporting what's happening, and like so again, it is interesting that you may not have any recent elders, but your mom being a theologian and a priest, like a pastor and
Yeah.
like being a historian, like that is, you know, that's a that's a strong foundation to come from, and as a woman in the church, like
T.
that's a big deal. Like that's a big deal, and I feel like that really does tie in with our conversation today because, um, the next question I wanted to ask you were are there any your Hoodoo swim series, right?
Yeah.
And again, I think it is like it is so cute. It is so. I think my favorite one. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Favorites. My favorite one is the Mean Girls revival, right? Where it's just like, this one practices voodoo and this one practices hoodoo, and I am dying, and I'm just like, this is so cute. We need this. We need like more, images of young people like fully proud of where they come from and fully proud of those ancestral ties. So, would you say did you grow up with people that practice different things? Were you like was the series an imaginative retelling, or was it drawn? Were there any actual people, historical, actual folks in your life that influenced the series?
I like that question. I love it. So to answer it in two parts, so yes and no. So growing up, I grew up around a lot of nationalities. Um, like completely different nationalities. I grew up very, very Christian. Like I'm not gonna lie, when I grew up in the context of when I was young, it was given like Christian everything. It was given like I'm only hanging out with the Christian girls. But growing up around a lot of nationalities, I was around a lot of people who were incredibly loud and very, very proud of their background. And a few examples that I can give is like I was around a lot of Moroccans, Algerians, Lebanese, Haitians, Dominicans, Mexicans, people who were just like, we don't just love us, we're proud of us. And that to me always inspired me because these people knew their culture, knew where they came from, and they loved themselves, but that love they had for their culture caused them to have a love and appreciation for other cultures as well. So me personally, I just grew up around people where it's like if you are that girl, you're cultured, you know cultures, you speak more than one language, you like other ethnicities foods. When people start acting xenophobic, and I'm like, it's giving broke. So that energy inspired me for that sort of like Mean Girls X Afro spirituality crossover because I really love Mean Girls specifically because I love the fashion behind it. I love watching interviews of the stylists explaining like the wardrobe gives, and people down the line generations after love it because the wardrobe was so intentional, but because there are so many dynamics that you can draw. And as an astrologer, Mean Girls is something I will constantly refer when looking at different archetypes. And I wanted to do a crossover with Afro spirituality because there are so many things in pop culture that unite us, especially as adults. Things like Transformers, superheroes, the Avengers, the Bradstalls, things that reminisce from our childhood that still can be carried in adulthood. And I feel like for a lot of us, including myself, we didn't see that with Afro spirituality. And when I see people who grew up with this, they have this sort of unwavering pride in their spirituality. It's like in their bones. And I love that. And I've always thought like the reason why shows like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and like shows of that genre catch us is because yes, we love the crazy fantasy. I love the crazy fantasy, right? We're always going to love the crazy fantasy. But we yearn for a type of coziness and comfort. And that's why we love practical magic. We love seeing the woo, but in a cozy way, in a homely way. And I've always took it upon myself and felt this for myself that this stuff can get deep and dark. And I'm here for the blood, roots, and bones. But also, I want to show this in an everyday way. Because for someone like me, this is an everyday thing. You can be glam, you can be fierce. And one of the reasons why I have the Mean Girls X Afro Spirituality crossover, and I also did a series called like If the Bradstalls Were Witches. So I was like, oh, Chloe would be like a Slavic girl and she would read runes, and like Yasmin, she does like Persian mysticism. And the reason why I do that is because these feminine, quote unquote, representations are some of the few representations I've seen that show women being independent and fierce. And that's a sort of conversation I've had in the past where I was like, a lot of the girly TV shows back in the day, they were very hyper feminine looking, but they displayed very healthy dynamics of women being independent from men in their storyline and having healthy relationship if there were men. Like Bratz, for example, the girls loved fashion and makeup, but one of their pillars in their friendship was being authentic, intelligent, capable, strong, fierce. You see the girls fighting a lot. They have disagreements between each other, but they talk it out. And when you see how they engage with boys, they have a healthy relationship with the boys, but the boys are not central to their story or identity. And when the girls need help, the boys help them. The boys don't mock them or make fun of them. So I always, as much as sometimes we can critique some of these shows, I personally always go back to my drawing board with these shows because they show girliness as something intelligent, fierce, independent. And I like taking that and combining that with spirituality. Yes, you can have fun. Yes, you can have sisterhood. That doesn't negate the fact that you're strong, you're smart, you're capable, you're fierce. And as the years have gone by, I realized that we're getting a decrease of this. So I'm like, well, let me put my boots on and let me get my wand and let me blend practical magic with Mean Girls and give you Regina George at Hogwarts because that's what the girls need.
No, and it's so funny that you mentioned Sabrina because like I've been such a fan of Sabrina since I was a girl, right? Like I remember the original series with Melissa Joan Hart. Then I remember the animated series with her
Yep.
little sister. Then I remember the new series with like on Netflix. And I love like then every iteration it was like with the exception of the animated series, because Uncle Quigley was not a part of the other two like live action series really. He was like the only man in the house, but it would be like Aunt Hilda, Aunt Zelda, and Sabrina, and and I just loved. I personally like the animated series is like one of my favorite versions of Sabrina because I love the teenage Hilda and Zelda, right? Like they're
Yeah.
like I'm 300 years old and I'm still a teenager and I'm still gonna go out and I'm still gonna have a good time, and it was like and they were still trying to impart this wisdom with Sabrina. And Sabrina is, going through her hijinks and, being foolish. And, you know, even the original Sabrina series that used to come on at the same it used to come on right like I think it used to come on like right before or right after Clueless, right? So like even having this like Clueless animated series, and it was like you had all of these like you did we did used to have a lot of representations of like women enjoying womanhood,
Yeah.
and not it being about anything to do with men, and that's okay, right? Like, and I think that there is something to be said, and there is a lot of room for creation and growth when it comes to expression, how our Afro traditional practices are, and like things that we can share publicly, right? Because I feel like there's a
Yeah.
lot of secrecy around stuff. Like the old heads are just like, we shouldn't talk about this at all, and it's like, but like you have to have something that
Something.
is we everybody has something that's forward facing. There's nothing wrong with showcasing and highlighting certain aspects of stuff. Like a lot of us did fall in love with practical magic. A lot of us did grow up on Charmed. Like
Yeah.
and there's never been anything that has been black or non-white that's like been
Yeah.
mainstream in that sense, and that is okay. I feel like that's why a lot of us love American Horror Stories Coven, because we did get to see you know this another avenue of that, and
Yeah.
it's like that was a big deal for a lot of people. Now, was everything accurately depicted? Of course not, right? Absolutely not. But when you think about what representation is, and what it means to just like showcase things in entertainment in lighthearted ways, I do think that that's important. Because I don't know, have you ever seen that movie The Serpent in the Rainbow?
No, that's one I haven't seen.
Okay, so you can put that on your list, right? So The Serpent in the Rainbow is about this journalist who goes down to Haiti in the middle of like there's like some kind of uprising happening, right? He
Yeah.
goes down there to do this investigative story about these people that's getting turned into zombies, essentially, right? So
Yeah.
when I was a kid and I watched the movie, I was terrified because I was like, "What the hell is this? This is so scary." As an adult watching the movie, like with most horror movies now that I watch as an adult, I'm like, "Well, you know what, sir? You should have been down there. Shouldn't but you should have minded your
You
business."
should have had some white powder. You should have wrapped your head. That's all you.
Exactly. I don't know who told you to go down there and be in them people's business, but that's what you get. Okay. And it was like, and I remember as a kid, my mom was like, "This movie's really scary. Like, you shouldn't watch this movie." And then as an adult, now that I practice, I was just like, well, I'm not scared because I know that's not going to be me. I'm like, I'm fine. But like to watch it and to see like how certain things are sensationalized is like, yes, like we're we're lying to ourselves if we're going to say that entertainment and media doesn't play a role in how people engage with these practices and how people even feel about these practices.
100%.
We have a right to be proud of our things too, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't have to overly explain all of our business to everybody, but there is a lot of room
Yeah.
for media of all sorts, whether that's children's books, because like you said, Anansi, I remember those Anansi stories. I loved those Anansi stories, right? Like, and Br'er Rabbit. Like, my grandmother used to read us.
Come
And my
on.
grandmother also used to read us grim fairy tales, which are very dark and morbid and magical. Like,
They really are.
like dark. You're like, these are
Oh,
cautionary tales for who exactly?
who is running around Europe doing some bullshit? Why'd you need these stories?
Like, I'm like, this is for kids. How is this for kids? I'm scared. Like, this is really tough. Like, the witch that's eating the children. Like, Hansel and Gretel is a horror movie, okay?
I'm
What do you
I want to
mean?
see a good Hansel and Gretel done horror because I like that you said Grimm fairy tales. I recently bought the book and I was like, I'm like, yo, y'all keep wanting to do like reruns and part two. The movies don't need a part two. Get in the fairy tales and make a nasty horror movie.
Do the Grimm fairy tales.
Absolutely.
Do the Grimm fairy tales, okay?
We
Because
need
what do you
that.
mean this father abandoned his children in the woods, and then a witch enticed them, and then she put them in the oven? What? Dude, that is a lot. That is a lot. I'm
That's a
scared.
lot. Like, I
I'm
love it.
scared. Did you watch Penny Dreadful?
No. Let me tell you something. I'm behind on so many
Oh,
things.
okay, so
It's a
Penny
long
Dreadful is
list.
Penny Dreadful is an old series, but
Okay.
that's all. I forgot what it was on. I don't know if it was on AMC or Star. It was on one of these channels. Anyway,
Okay.
Penny Dreadful, again, fantastic about the witches and the werewolves and Dorian Gray, and I think you would truly love it, right?
Okay. I'm glad that's my list.
Yeah, Josh Hartnett is in there. He plays like this American werewolf in Europe, and then is it Eva Green? She plays like this woman who's like tortured by she's like getting hunted by the vampires and the witches, and then it's like a whole battle between vampires and the witches, and then Patti LuPone plays a witch at the edge of the fucking swamp, and she's
Okay.
like, no, you will really like it. Okay,
Okay.
I'll give you a list of like some good witchy
Okay.
material to watch or whatever.
I love that.
So you say you love Mean Girls, and you love Bratz. So how does like I said, you obviously have your own creative vision, but you obviously have been very inspired by Y2K aesthetic. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting because like everything that's always new again, right? Like everything goes and comes in these styles. So it's like I'm excited to see people reviving certain Y2K things because I feel like that was like a really good time. Like I don't know, I feel like things were like so innovative, like digitally,
Yeah.
technology, the fashion, like and and you said something recently when you were like, we're in a glamdemic.
We are in a glamdemic.
And I just love that. So again, how is it that how was Y2K and the early 2000s and this like very pink, fuzzy, blingy, poppy, just over the top? How is this? How is this working for you? Like, how are you infusing this into your creative vision? Because you're also an illustrator. You're also,
That
you
is
know,
true.
like
That
you
is true.
right. So how is this going for you?
So to give a bit of backstory, hashtag Ace lore, I am technically like older Gen Z, so I am Gen Z, but I grew up around all the millennials, studded heels, the long platinum hair, the scene era, like I was there. But growing up, I was a very, very shy kid, and I was a bit of a loner in school. Like people were like, "You're not a loner." I'm like, "No." Like I was called a loner in school. I wasn't really good at making friends. I kind of was the type of girl that would just like be friends with anyone who could be friends with me. Um, and I tended to kind of like just stay home a lot. So a lot of those teen years where people were like, "Yeah, we went to this party and got drunk," and I didn't really do that my whole high school life. I have a few fun experiences that I had, but I was remotely just like always keeping to myself. And now that I'm older, I feel it's gonna be so funny to say, but I feel when I look at like my teen years, I feel like it was kind of like a dream where I was kind of just like on autopilot. I was just being the me that I needed to be to get by. Whereas now that I'm older and I've kind of established my identity in real life, online, I get to be who I want to be. I just feel that I'm so nostalgic for that era because there are so many things that I witnessed but I didn't do and try. And that's why now I'm kind of like spinning the block a little bit on all those things. And that era was very fun, like you said. Like that was a time where we got a PSP. I remember like smuggling one of my brother's PSPs on the bus, playing Grand Theft Auto at 7 in the morning. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like just that I feel like in pop culture, in a lot of videos, in media, there was this desire to make something fantasy. Like you see it in fashion, like we're not just showing you nice clothes, we're telling you a story, we're selling you an image. In a lot of movies, we're diving you into a universe. Like, and I'm a storyteller, so that will always speak to me when I share things, when I talk about something. I'm not just trying to show you an object, I'm trying to get you into a world. And so the Y2K era in sort of like the MC Bling era and the 2000s era, it really just, irregardless of that, like, unfortunately, my brain rots for nostalgia. I'm going to be nostalgic to the day I die. Okay. I'm going to romanticize this era that we're in that's very ghetto when I'm 50. But I'm very nostalgic for that timing because there is so much that I saw, but so little that I did. And now that I'm older, that maybe I can afford certain things or I'm just like independent enough to do it, I revive that. And I feel like a lot of people can relate coming from plenty of different backgrounds in which you weren't able to do something, but now you can. And it's like, let's bring this back. Let's have fun. Let's reinvent these things. So that's why the sort of like one of my favorite archetypes that are my muses is sort of like the stereotype of the girl that's very pink and frivolous but super sharp, like Elle Woods. Like I like that. Like yes, I like wearing mini skirts, and I'm smarter than you. Be mad. You know what I'm saying? Like I very much I'm the person. My one of my personal philosophies is I can have my cake and eat it too. I don't need to sacrifice anything to be well respected. I respect myself, the rest will come later. So this sort of childhood nostalgia, this sort of like fantasy combined with, you know, taking yourself very seriously and being very ambitious, that's kind of like what speaks to me the most.
And that's so funny you say that because that does roll right into my next question, which is what role does feminism play in your work?
I love that question so much. And like I don't know how to answer it in the sense that I'm like, how could feminism not be? And the reason why I say that is like, the best way I can answer that question is a girl once said, I never said I was a feminist. I just acted like a whole human being, and people started calling me feminist as an insult. And that's how I feel. When I was a kid, I'm a firstborn child. I'm a firstborn daughter. I'm a firstborn granddaughter. When I was a kid, right, represent. When I was a kid, I ran around and I played. I loved playing dress up. I loved playing in the dirt. I was very outspoken as a child, was very book smart. I was very kind as much as I wanted to fight, right? I thought I was just being me. Apparently that was a sin. Apparently that was feminist. And that's what makes me tell people when you see a woman just being a person, whether it's right or wrong, and you are like, ugh, the feminist, that's why we need feminism. Because a girl can't do nothing without being caught for it. So I would say feminism is the alpha and the omega of everything that I do because I will not be stopped. I came here to be me and thrive and be very fabulous, okay? You call that being feminist, I call that aceology, okay? Now, apparently we got a problem with that in this world. Apparently that is feminist because apparently a woman can't do that. Well, then that inherently makes all the work that I do feminist. It's one of the reasons why my passion as a storyteller throughout the years gets anchored deeper and deeper inside of me. Kind of going back to the point where you mentioned about things like the Grimm's fairy tales, one thing that a teacher told me when I was in high school is they said that mythology and folklore is the foundation of human society. A human society develops after their folklore. We take parts of ourselves, imagine it a little more perfect, a little bit more strong, and a little bit taller, maybe with longer hair, and that's God, right? And I say that in the context of maybe, let's say, people don't necessarily believe in spirituality or gods. That's how I would frame it. That's what religion, politics, mythology, that's what it all is. I once told someone, I can't tell you what is the one true religion because there is not one true religion. But if I were to say what is the one true religion, it's the religion of storytelling. Religion, politics, that's what it all is, right? Folklore is the foundation to a society developing. Whether or not a country, a state, a tribe, or a people is recognized as being a legal entity, I would say if they have folklore, they're a people. Okay, that's why when things like colonization happen, what are the first things that we do? Target temples, schools, churches, libraries, elders, oracles, and storytellers. Because if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going, right? Folklore is proof to me, especially in our modern society, that women have existed in a million of ways in and outside of what we consider is a woman. But in our modern era, we're only retelling the same stories to tell women you can be a girl in this box. Meanwhile, the girl is the whole pyramid, right? And as a storyteller, it's why I love to sort of in my work, in my practice, and just how I show up in the world, I really like to embody and share and talk about folklore of women from the past. One of my favorite stories comes from a book called Bridget, and I think it's so awesome. Basically, the author is a devotee of the Celtic goddess Bridget, but she basically does a personal discussion and a historical analysis of the growth of Bridget from her Celtic roots to being turned into an Irish saint to be turned into a Haitian Loa.
I was just about to say Brigitte is in Haitian voodoo.
I loved it. I loved it because she's very historical with the facts and she talks about her personal faith. So it's very much like tea, but also like one on one. And in that book, she mentions a story in Irish mythology in which there's this whole saga, and this guy needs to go to an island. And before he goes to the island, he's told, you got to be careful because there are women on that island, warrior women, and they have the strength of 3 male warriors each. And basically, he was told that you can't think because you're a man, you're strong, because if you go to this island, like the women of this island, they have the strength of 3 men. And the story goes on to say that he did go to that island and he was accepted because instead of trying to dominate the woman, he appreciated them and worked with them, and they saw value in him and didn't kind of like chastise him. And so every time that I talk about these things, people are like, well, women aren't meant to be this, women are meant to be that. And I'm going to be like, let me tell you something. There's not a single culture or tribe in history that has ever agreed on the same definition of what a woman is. What we consider feminine now would have been masculine 3,000 years ago. It's You're allowed your own personal definitions, but there is no law that says this is that and the third. But a lot of the time when we think and talk about women who were fierce, independent warriors, like I got a vault. This is not even like half my library. I got a vault of stories that will tell you about women who were warrior princesses, women who were independent, women who were unruly. You don't even have to be a good woman to be valued as a woman. Like, yeah, some of these girls were doing mess. Inspiring. So I would really say like everything that I do is that standard because everything I do revolves around the fact that my practices empower and center on identities that in our day and age are persecuted. So what comes last in the world, in my traditions and how I do things, it actually comes first.
Okay, I love that. I love the wild woman archetype because sometimes you just need that. Like women do need those though, like you said, the mythology, the stories are what remind people of their humanity, and it reminds people what connects them to their culture. And women in particular, we need constant reminders that there is not one way to exist, that any way that we exist is valid, and that if a woman is existing in a different way than you, that doesn't make her any less of a woman or anything like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that we are very much in this time of, women policing each other on how he's supposed to be and how he's supposed to act, and it's like, girl, why are we doing this?
Like rent is due.
Like,
Don't worry
please,
about what I'm doing.
don't
Like
worry about what I'm doing. Okay, don't worry about if I'm performing femininity properly. Like, they are. Are you gonna put something on these bills? Because
thank you. Like
the eggs don't went up. What are we talking about, girl? Like, come on. And yeah. There was one question I wanted to ask. Were there any specific stories in this? I do like the story of the man who had some sense and went to the island in reverence rather than going in there in
hello.
rebellion. And he had his life. He was able to live
Exactly.
his life. Is there another story that you could think of that comes to mind when you think about some of maybe another story about some kind of unruly woman in mythology?
When I think of mythology, one, not, I mean, it's not stereotypical, I guess, but Circe or Kirky, depending how you pronounce her name, I will always admire her because in the retellings of her mythology from Greek mythology, some say she's a goddess, some say she's a demigoddess of witchcraft and magic. So obviously, I'm like mother. I kind of admired her because she had her own sort of land and island to herself, and she was just being an academic witch. She was doing her spells and everything. And here comes a ship of men that landed on her property, and she turned them into pigs. As you should. Mind you, I like bacon, so I was like, oh, I see her vision, absolutely. I would have turned one into a big, fried some eggs, merci beaucoup. Okay? But I say that because I remember being like reading through this forum, and they were asking, like, okay, the definition of feminism is a bit clear in our era, right? Do these Greek goddesses or do these gods from this religion, would they be feminist? And someone said, which I think I would agree with, they said a character, a female character being feminist is not dependent on how she helps women, although that is a bonus and virtuous. It simply requires that she acts in a way that men can act and that we don't let other women act. And that caught my mind because, yes, what people don't understand is that masculinity is seen as the standard. Women are seen as either less than, half than, or under that. A woman could be evil in a story, completely evil. But the moment she's allowed to act in a way that men can and that we prevent women from acting, she would become a feminist figure. That's also why, ironically, I think in pop culture, we have an admiration for evil queens. Because we know she's evil. We kind of like that she's evil because she's not trying to hide the fact that she's evil, but she's acting a way in her humanity and in her femininity that we've seen time and time again men being able to act. We see constant heroic figures of men making horrible mistakes, but we give them a pass because they're a hero. But we never see women act like that. I think that's why people admire figures like Regina George, the evil queen from Snow White, and other people like that, because we know what we're getting when we see them, and we're finally seeing a human display the virtues and the ugliness of what it means to be human, something that we limit and structure for women.
No, absolutely. Like even in Coven, like Fiona and
Yes.
her like she's clinging to being the supreme, and she's just like holding on to dear life for it, and it's like she's going bald and she's going through hell, and you watch her and you're just like, girl, like you gonna do all of that? But then like when we get to the backstory of everything that happened with her and Myrtle, oh gosh, the fashion in that was so good. Like,
Right.
oh, it was so
I feel
good.
like all of us that grew up in that era, when we saw Coven, we gagged. Like Tumblr, when
Oh no,
AHS Coven
Tumblr was
came
on
out.
fire at that time. Like you could not go a day without somebody sharing some screenshots, some gifs. Like there was like constant memes. Like there, I mean, I still use memes from it. Like
Max.
and it's just like all of the girls had their own little heroes journeys, and like uh I forget what was her name, Cordelia, and Cordelia's journey of like being like so docile and so prim and so proper, and then finally realizing like you're the natural successor to this whole situation, and
Yeah.
like the minute that she literally was like disfigured is when she was like, okay, I have to step into this power. And like how many
Right.
of us, as women have gone through something like totally traumatic, and
Hmm.
you don't want that to happen. You don't want that to be a catalyst, but for a lot of us, it is a catalyst for us to
Hmm.
recognize like I do have personal power. I do have agency. Like this horrible thing happened to me, and I do empathize with the villains a lot of the time. Like I
Hmm.
understand people's villain origin story. I'd be like,
Yeah.
well, you know what? That that tracks.
I would
Like
have snapped too. Matter of fact, I would have done worse sooner. So,
I actually would have burnt this whole thing down ages ago. Y'all got off scot free, and I think that's also something I've been doing, like in my own family, of like, recognizing some of the women in my family that have been deemed the villain and like,
hmm
this like horrible person, and I'm just like, well, what happened to them?
Well, what
And then
was
when
the
I get,
story? Who was
I'm
all
like,
there?
who did it? And then when I get to the story, I'm like, well, she's not wrong, actually. Like, she
Yeah.
got a little messed up. Like I tell the story a lot. My grandmother on my father's side,
Mhm.
she told me she didn't even want to get married. She said she wanted to go to the convent, be a nun and a nurse, and
Wow.
that was taken from her. And she got
That
very
dream
old.
was sabotaged. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm like, wow. Well, of course, she is the ice queen of. She was not the warm and fuzzy
Yes.
grandmother. I don't. I definitely empathize with her a lot
Hmm.
after that. And a lot of people in my family was like, oh, well, she's this and she's that. I'm like, yeah, but
Y'all
given the
took her dream.
circumstance,
Y'all lucky that the worst she gives you is a cold shoulder. Like,
yeah, I'm like, she could actually stand to be worse, like, and
yeah.
you're lucky that any of y'all even survived into adulthood because she could have just been done with this whole thing,
Yeah.
like to have 6 kids after that. Yeah, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. So I understand. Like, I think
Yeah.
that um, it is something as women for us to look at all of these stories and like recognize that all of us are dealing. Like you said, the maleness is the standard,
Hmm.
and that is something that all of us have to come to terms with at some point. Some of us see it very early, and be like, hell no, I don't like this.
Hmm.
Like to hell with this. I don't like that. Some of us are like, well, maybe if I just go along. Like we all have different ways
Journeys.
of trying to like navigate this like sometimes archaic systems of like a man is better than you, and then now and then you get to be an adult, and you're like,
I've never seen the
oh,
proof of that. Not to be
like,
narcissistic, but I've never seen the proof of that.
wait a minute, wait a minute. Some of this messaging is conflicting, and I don't know if I agree with all of this actually, and that makes me a bad person if I don't agree with all of this. It's kind of crazy. Like,
You know?
I don't think that I don't think that there's any wrong way to express your womanhood. I don't think there's any right way. I think that we have to give women the freedom to be who we're supposed to be. And like
Hmm.
you said, the minute that you start to impose things on someone, and you're now it's a thing. Now you made it a thing.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
the little girl that wanted to be a mechanic. Somebody's like, girls don't do that, and it's like, well, why not? Why not?
Mind you, we're in a mechanic shortage. So if little Miss Eliana want to be a mechanic, well, let's get her a scholarship.
Like, let's do it, and like I do feel like we are limiting ourselves as a culture if we are just constantly forcing people in these rigid roles and these
Hmm.
rigid stereotypes, and we're not allowing you know the full breadth of people's humanity.
Yeah.
um so that being said, how do you see the relationship between spirituality and pop culture?
I really love that question. The best way I can summarize it is, at least in my practice, and I know you definitely are gonna catch the vibe that I'm on. We kind of know that like spirits and juju energy, it's in everything, right? So to view pop culture as like something that's just like does not have that, to me just doesn't make sense. When I think about like old world religions, when we study them, pop culture would have been the equivalent to like people who were storytellers or sort of like oracles. And not to get too like technical or nerdy with it, when I think of gods like Apollo, these deities rule performances and actors and beauty, but what else? Oracles, prophecy. You know what I'm saying? Um, I really do see a spiritism in pop culture because I see a spiritism in the mundane, and the pop culture is just the mundane glamorized, right? I also feel for me it's a way to connect on deeper subjects with a broader audience. I can tend to be kind of like very low key and very shy at first. As a person, I usually don't approach people unless they approach me. But when people kind of want to get me to talk about spirituality, usually the first things I like to talk about is I can just do an astrological breakdown on your favorite football player, or I can show how a certain transit you're experiencing, another celebrity experienced it. When we get into like really specific detailings of like astrology, let's say, and I'm like, well, someone that has this placement, it might show up in their appearance like this. Here's an example. These 5 celebrities who we have their life on Wikipedia and 100 pictures of their face, here's how it can look like. It's a very easy way that you can get a profound message through in a more, not shallow, but just a more easy way with a broad audience.
interesting. I love that because, like you said, everything has a historical context, right? So, like, the people who we consider to be famous now, like how even the idea of fame and celebrity has evolved in like the millennia, right? Like before,
Right.
it used to be like people who were of nobility, people who were the oracles, people who had certain professions. Now it's the everyday person. Like
Yeah.
everyone's a celebrity, right, of their own making. And and to that, I will say that also it shifts a culture in a certain way that
Yeah.
we're always performing now, right? Like everything's performative, but that's humans, like that's people, right? Like
I would agree with that. I like that.
like everybody, like if you work in retail, you got to put in
Yeah.
hard, to make those sales. If you're a teacher, you got to be theatrical in a way to keep your
Yeah.
students engaged. Like it's always an element of performance there, and I think that um, it is interesting that what the things that we do platform and the things that are highlighted in spotlight um sometimes always goes to whatever the dominant culture of society is, but that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean that that's all that there is, right? Like
Yeah.
there are other people that exist within that, so it's always
Mhm.
interesting, especially as black people, when it's like we can always see ourselves
Always.
mainstream culture, right? Like we can watch things that aren't directly reflected of us and feel like I can still see myself in these characters. I can
Yeah.
still watch Mean Girls and be like, I absolutely understand, why Katie was, feeling like she needed to suppress her intelligence, and like, and why she started to act crazy when she was, all she got a little too deep into character, right?
Too deep in the character. Yeah.
She went a little too deep undercover. It was like, girl, you was supposed to be doing a mission. What happened here? Like, you weren't supposed to take it on like that, right? And like, I want my pink shirt back. Like, again, it's like,
That was so real because we were like, you know what? Like, if we gonna cut it here, we gonna cut it here. Like,
like, and we can see ourselves in that. So I think that it is interesting now that we have like this new crop of filmmakers and creators and thinkers and pop culture people, talking heads, like all of this stuff that looks more like us. Now, how do you again, how do you want to see your work challenge or even expand like whatever traditional representations that we have of blackness in the media right now? Because for so long it has been, we have to kind of go along with what's okay. Studios are like, well, we're not gonna support, nobody's gonna watch that. And we know that that's not true. But it's like you're
yeah,
gonna say that no one's gonna watch it, but people are gonna watch it, right? And then when they do showcase some of the things that are ours, it's like I at least could tell. I'm like, y'all need more black people behind the camera because black folk don't do that. That's not like that's not something that we would do. That's just not who was there, who was in the room making the
like
decision.
when y'all say black, like was a black person there or like someone who looked like they were in the shadows? Like,
Yeah, like how black were they really? And yeah, like how do you want your work to challenge and like even subvert some of these mainstream misconceptions about blackness that we have right now?
To be honest, I really see blackness through the lens of versatility. Like I said, I grew up very multicultural, so very young, I was accustomed to different types of blackness. I coincidentally see blackness and how we are all so similar and where we differ, right? So when I see, like growing up, there's a lot of stereotypically black shows and movies that my parents did not let us watch because they were like, that's like minstrelsy, right? And sometimes my mom was like, I'm sorry, I might have been a little too woke. And I'm like, you were strict, but it caused me to be authentically me, especially growing up around when I'm around people who don't look like me. I don't feel like I have to change or be palatable. I'm me. I'm being African American to me is pride, you know? So when I see the way blackness shows up in the media, to me it's kind of like marshmallows. Like, oh, it tastes good and it's interesting, but it's not food. The people are still hungry. That's why when Jordan Peele came out, it don't matter what your race is, the girls ate it because it's raw and it's real. It's why I feel not to sound like I got an inflated ego, but it's why I feel like, oh, y'all just wait. Y'all just wait till the ancestors give me my time to jump because the girl's gonna eat. Very quickly, I learned young that I can sort of be conventional, but I'm always gonna give up the act. Like I can only pretend for so long. So that's why I'd rather just be me bluntly. So if you don't like me, you just I'm not gonna be on your radar. And the people who will like me, they're gonna find me right away. I do want to see I have like two sides to my work. Part of my work is kind of like I like to say, the blood, the root, and the bones. Kind of like you said earlier, there's just some stuff that's got to stay within a niche group. But there's another part of the work where I'm like, this needs to become pop culture. This is how we're gonna leave our mark in history. This needs to become pop culture. This needs to be in the pop culture wave. And that's why I find I do have a certain level of comfort in being in sort of what's kind of like plastic and shiny lights because I'm like, I'm gonna sustain that. But Anansi gonna be Beyonce tomorrow, okay? Like I want to see, I want to show, I want to see, I want people to experience blackness in all the ways that it's not. As an African American, we are very different from Haitians and we are also very, very similar. Good food, good music, gorgeous features, and we love to fight, okay? So I want us to experience pride in our individual blackness, but feel some sort of beauty and similarity in our differences. And especially in this day and age, I feel like, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like everybody's trying to fight everybody. Or more so, everybody's trying to get people to fight with each other. And I'm always going to stand down on, I'm very proud of what I come from. And I'm very proud of being around what's similar to me. And that's why I'm just like, Anansi gonna be Beyonce by tomorrow.
No, I love that. And I love even what your mom said. Because, like, growing up, my parents didn't let me watch everything either, right? I also didn't grow up with cable. So I feel like when you don't grow up with cable and, like, access to certain stuff, like, you kind of, like, you got to make do with what you have. And I read a lot. And my grandmother had a lot of Greek, like, mythology around the house. And the Grimm fairy tales. And,
Yeah.
Hans Christian Andersen. And, like, right? So, like, all of that. And that was always so interesting to me, and I loved Egyptology, like
Yeah.
school. Right, I was just like obsessed with like, well, this pantheon of gods, and like, and again, that's when you realize that every culture has like their front facing stuff, and then they have their shadow stuff, because like,
Mhm.
there's nothing that's 100. Like that's humans. That's
That's
people.
life.
That's just life, right? And
Mhm.
as somebody who I'm like reevaluating my place in the business and everything right now. Like it's just so refreshing to hear you talk about how important it is for us to be proud of what we have and who we are, and like that does mean something. Even if people don't fully understand everything, that's totally
Mhm.
fine. Like everything is not for people to understand. We don't truly need to spell things out for people. Some stuff is just because it looks pretty or it looks different, and that's okay.
That's okay.
That is totally okay, and we can celebrate that. And the people that will know, like, there is some power in like doing some stuff publicly, and like the people that know be like, oh, is that
We caught T.
caught
Okay.
that? I caught that little reference there. But if everybody else is just like, oh,
That's fine.
it's just fine. And I think that is also an important part of just being human. And
Hmm.
if everything was the same, like right now, the beigeification of everything is really pissing me off. Like, I'm sorry, like I'm frightened. I'm like,
The beigeification
I
is
can't
really
take
what it
it.
is.
It's really scary. I cannot take it. It is frightening to me. It literally gives like the giver, like people just living in saneness and weirdness. And I'm like, how is that? But like, that's what they want us to be. They're pushing that, right? And I think even that kind of goes into like one of my last like questions or whatever about this like conservative and trad wife movement and this whole like clean girl instead of like all of these things that I'm just like, this is a little thinly veiled racism. I don't know if y'all catching this, but I'm like, all of the cultures that I come from are ostentatious, over the top, and
Maximalist.
yes, like I pride myself on all of my jewelry and all of my rings, and if I have my nails done, they'll be long, and like all of the things.
Over the top.
Like, how did we get here? Like, how did we get to this place now where You're literally telling women that they need to wear a beige overcoat with blue jeans and a white t-shirt, and there's packs of women walking around New York City just like that. That's weird. That's not weird. Like that's not odd. And
Like that's not like honestly, moment of silence. Like hello.
like, honey, like blink twice because what? Because what? I'm frightened. I'm desperately. I'm like,
Especially New York. It's very odd for to New York because like I have this thing in my head where I'm like I'm not from New York, but I feel once I land in New York is gonna adopt me. I'm like everybody walking around looking minimalist in New York City, America.
but see, okay. Well, here's the thing. New York is, and I will say this for everybody that's not from New York or whatever. New York is a very segregated city, right?
Okay, okay, okay.
But there are places like where it's just like people can, like I said, I went to school. I went to school in East Harlem, which is
Mhm.
notoriously Puerto Rican.
Okay, okay.
So my whole life is black and Puerto Rican, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't go to school with no white people, literally, until I got to college.
Wow.
That's how segregated New York City is. Like, you could go to school, all 12 years of school, there's no mixed, like, it's not mixed like that at all, right?
Wow.
So there are the packs of girls in Soho,
Mm-hmm.
with the jeans and the overcoats and the bleach blonde hair and everything's very minimalist. And then you go to the Bronx, you go uptown, and then the Dominican girls are doing something else, and then you go to Flatbush, and then the Caribbean girls are doing something else, and then you go out to Queens, and then those West Indian girls are doing something else, and Black American. So it's like everybody has but a lot of that's changing,
Yeah.
because of people traveling, and leaving the city because it's getting expensive, things getting gentrified. But I
Yeah.
truly think that, I don't know. I'm hoping. My hope is that somehow some of this like harsh times that we're coming into spurs people's creativity again, because I feel
Yeah.
like that's kind of like what kind of art is born out of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also am very much like, I'm just noticing certain trends with like certain like YouTubers and like personalities of being like people going back to the church. No disrespect to the church, but
But the
I'm seeing
stats show, history shows.
I'm just saying, I see times is getting tough, and I'm seeing the girlies going back to the church and looking down on the girls wearing the short skirts and the nice shoes and the hair and this whole like. I'm just saying, I see it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do see where it's going, and I'm wondering. My wonder for the future is like, what is that going to mean, right? When like the girls are like, well, you must be doing something illicit to afford your beauty maintenance and your upkeep,
Mm-hmm.
because it's and it's like, well, girl, why can't I just like wear my makeup and
Like the girls can't have Anastasia Beverly Hills anymore? Hello.
we can't. I can't like a nice shoe. I can't like a good piece of jewelry. Like, what's the problem? Like, that's crazy. What are you talking about? In these dark times, do I need to look like what's happening out here?
Like
Truly,
like
do I
a
need
like a
that?
flight attendant back in the 90s? Like
Like, come on. I don't know. Like I said, we've seen it, and but I feel like it is interesting if you think about like Y2K, early 2000s aesthetic. That was right before the market crashed, like
yeah.
right before the recession, and like the rise, like even from my standpoint of like working in television, the rise of reality TV happened because of the strikes, right? Right before
Yeah.
the strikes, and then like they were like, well, we need these reality shows, and then the rise of celebrity. So now I'm just wondering, like, what is this next cycle going to look like? Is it going to be the conservative, soft girl celebrity that sustains? What do you think?
I'll be honest with you, like my opinion might seem a bit paradoxical, right? Because I will say this. Years ago, y'all saw the girls have Anastasia Beverly Hills pomade eyebrow, beat face to go to the groceries. And y'all was talking it day in and day out on how a girl should be natural and love herself. The girls was getting a little bit of filler. Y'all was talking day in and day out a girl shouldn't have filler. Now that this sort of beigification, like you said, happened, now we're like, why are the girls taking out their filler? So I'm like, it's very contextual. But what I will say is that in my opinion, from what I know from like a historical standpoint, a lot of things when it comes to beauty and art have an association with wealth Because if you live in a society that's limited by your ability to make money, the more money you have, the more free you will be. That's why there are so many art styles that were actually just sponsored by wealthy families, right? Um, it makes sense in our modern era where we're starting to kind of like regress on people's rights, where it's starting to become popular to start, just flat out being evil to certain demographics. Money's hard, everybody's broke. People who have no power are going to cling to the nearest thing they can have power to, right? I will always say this: if you are under pressure and you flock to something, you were never about it in the first place. That's why I don't bat an eye when I see all these girls that made, and when I say girls, I'm talking about everybody, all genders, all these people that made a following off of spirituality and they were very loud and obnoxious. Now that times get tough, all of a sudden they out here quoting Bible verses. You were never in this for the first place. You were never in this in the first place. When these people go back to this sort of clean girl aesthetic, back in my day, the clean girl aesthetic was just the no makeup look. It's nothing. It's just you glamorizing yourself in your plain natural state. It's nothing. These sort of like aesthetics, they're cosplaying something. They have no sustenance. When I see, the earthy girl aesthetic that comes with a culture, a history, the music, goth aesthetic, punk aesthetic, street urban aesthetic, the MC bling and the Y2, it comes with a culture. It comes with a group identifying with something, a message, something. It's food. Like I said, it's food for the spirit. That's why I'm not against aesthetics. I think the aesthetification of everything gives us actual words and definitions to thoughts and feelings to recognize them, right? This sort of clean aesthetic, it has no sustenance. But these people are wanting to conform to the next thing that they can relate to that has power so they can absorb and feel safe with the group. Unfortunately, these groups are not looking to keep you. They're looking to use you. And like you said, if we look at like after the crash in 2008 and when we look at the 2010s, that's when the girls were wearing mini shorts with studs. Everything had studs. That's when you had Kesha, the Far East movement. Dance music was going crazy. That's why, like, times are hard, but, like, one of the reasons why I'm low-key vibing right now is because the music that we're getting, like Jane Remover, Barely Human, like, oh, the music is gagging. This is the time where we are going to see a lot of revivals of old aesthetics with a new spin on them and new styles. I've been seeing it for years now with artists like Nine Lives, where we're getting a modern twist to electronic music in new ways. That's really good. So if you was beating your face yesterday and now you a clean girl, I love that for you because you never was in it. Okay, the girls that was wearing the Kat Von D, they're still wearing the Kat Von D. Sometimes I wear makeup, sometimes I don't, but I got 3 palettes of Anastasia Beverly Hills, and I will be using them. It never changes. These people that flock to nothingness had nothing to contribute. So good for them. Get out the community. You was never really down in the first place.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. And like you said about the aesthetics, I was talking with someone a couple of months ago, and they were like, I liked when the way people looked was the way that they lived, right? Like you said, the goth girls, like they was at the goth club, they was listening to the goth music, they was about that life. It wasn't just something that you picked up. And punk, was very anti-establishment. Like they were not, they stood for something, and
Hmm.
everyone had that, and there was nothing wrong with that, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like we used to poke a lot of fun about it in like in movies and pop culture about like cliques and different
These
groups.
stereotypes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was fun because it was like there
Yeah.
are people like that, and that is okay, right? To have these different types of people. I think when there's that level of sameness, it's to me I feel unsafe because now I'm just like I don't know who any of you people are. Like you say, you just go along with anything. Like I don't know what you're about. This is crazy. Like I can't. This is scary to me. Like where's the personality?
Where's the
Where's the
personality? And I
where's
remember someone like once said they were like, you can't. It's easy to remix an aesthetic, but you can't create an aesthetic out of nothingness because an aesthetic is the museum of you. So when we see MC Bling or coquette fashion, it's easy to define coquette fashion and separate it from vintage Americana, even though they look similar, because it represents certain archetypes, it represents a certain life, and you will see that life in these things. So that's why you're like, it's scary when everyone looks the same, because that's what an aesthetic is. Your values, what you embody, what you love, it shows. You're showing it. You can't make up an aesthetic. You reveal an aesthetic. It's the museum of you, you know? So that's why when everyone's playing, I'm like, gay rights? Who say gay rights? Who say Black Lives Matter real quick? God is a woman.
Let
Who
me just
say
throw that up in the air real quick. Let me just see. Anybody? Anybody? Okay. Oh no, this is not safe space. All right. Just wanted to just checking. Just checking. Cause I don't know what's going on here. I don't recognize nobody in here. I don't know. Just saying. And yeah, I mean, I think that like I feel like fast fashion has definitely influenced that. You know, people feeling like, and again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be able to
try
buy,
different
try
things?
different things. But it used to mean something to be like, I'm gonna save my little coins and I'm gonna get this statement piece. I'm gonna buy this
Yeah.
nice piece of jewelry, or I'm gonna get this perfume. You know, like um, that meant something.
Yeah.
You know, and like even thinking about like I think about my grandmother and like the things that my grandmother had in her closet. I used to be like, I used to ask her questions like, where did you get these shoes from? And she'd be like, oh girl, I went to this place and they had them, and then she would take the shoes to the shoemaker and then they would kind of fix them up for her, and then like she would wear that same shoe. She'll wear that same shoe for 10 years. You know,
Right?
like one of my favorite moments was when I was in elementary school. For some reason, like it wasn't no for some reason. When I was in elementary school and going into junior high school, there was like a massive '70s revival, right? Like
Yeah.
everything was about the '70s, like that '70s show, all this stuff, and clogs. Like everybody was wearing clogs and bell bottoms, and I wanted a pair of clogs so bad. And my grandmother was like, "Hold on," and she went in her closet and gave me. She had
Stop.
some clogs in the closet. Yo, when I say I was so excited,
Oh
that was
my
so. That was like everything to me. Like everybody bought their clogs. I'm like, I got mine from Nana. Like Nana had the
gosh. That's
clogs.
authentic.
Like these are vintage. Like I was hype about these clogs, right? And now in hindsight, I'm like, you couldn't catch me in no damn clogs. But it meant something, you
It
know?
meant
It
something.
meant something. It meant something. And I don't know, like I love seeing, the elders that still have their personal style. Like I love an OG that walks by smelling
Blinged out.
fragrant hair, that white
Yeah.
hair, just the whole. It's just like this person has lived, and like
Yes.
this person has a story to tell. This person is who they are. They've been this person,
Yeah.
like they've been this person for the last 40 years. They like when you said I'm gonna be in my bling and my pink and my whatever my anti. I don't give a damn. I'm gonna be
To
fearful.
the grave.
I love that. That is truly. I always tell people like that's like what OG I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be an old lady on my Zaza Gabor, like walk around in a
That's
little,
my
in a little
girl.
right in my little ruffled boa,
Yup.
with the heels. Like Nana,
Yup.
doctor said you're not supposed to wear heels anymore. Okay.
I love it. Stop. Like
I
100%.
I just love that. And my other my mom's mom was very much like mid-century modern. Like that was the house that we grew up in. And then my father's mom, like I said, even though she had a hard, time with accepting her role of motherhood, like she was very like pink, girly, over the top. I remember that bathroom was like pink. Like I was like, this whole bathroom is pink from the tiles to the fixtures.
Stop.
Everything was like over the top Caribbean, like maximalism,
I
like
love
over the
it.
top, like over the top. And she had sequin dresses and wigs and all these things. And I was just like, I was like, I just want that. She had a vanity, like a powder room, like
She
all
was
of these
a diva down. Like,
like diva.
oh,
So
oh,
like some of the attitude also makes sense too, because I'm like, well,
she's not just nobody.
like she's supposed. This is who she is. This is who
Yeah.
she is, and I love it. And I just love that. That's something that you are pushing in your work of just like there's nothing wrong. I feel like our culture has gotten so anti-woman. It's gotten so anti-girly. It's gotten so like everything that's fun and feminine is being deemed as is
Yeah, bro.
frivolous and wasteful. And it's just like
this is why I always like to bring things back to like astrology or mythology. I'm like, look at Venus. She is matron of arts, sculpture, painting, gardening, love, beauty, and sweetness, and war. Venus, one of her epithets is Venus Vitrix. She decides who wins in war. So come over here with that. This is frivolous, and I'm gonna show you all four of my knuckles on my fist. Like, I'm sorry, y'all. People got too comfortable being crazy. I'm crazy too. Two for two. Like, wake up, y'all.
Yeah. And lastly, okay, well, before we get into our last little closing round, whatever, you also are like very much into fragrances. I love a
Yes,
good
ma'am.
fragrance. I love a good fragrance oil. I love a good perfume.
Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
how did you get into fragrances and essential oils?
Honestly, the spirit of fragrance sort of like boxed me in the head one random day because I guess I did love fragrances going up. I will say that like not to quote my mother, I do quote my mother a lot because we really have a lot of similarities. My mother in style and aesthetic, she is she might appear simple in style, but she's heavy on quality in her pieces. So my mother's the type of person to wear like a white t-shirt and some jeans and shoes and a leather vest. But her leather vest is gonna be authentic leather. Her shoes are gonna be Jordan. She likes authentic shoes. She likes clothes that are made from different cultures, so on and so forth. So when it comes to perfume, my mother growing up, one of my earliest memories of my mother, she was always a perfume snob. To this day, she is. I would dare say my mother does not like buying any perfume. My mother has said this. She says, I don't buy perfume that is from a brand that doesn't have a house. I said, oh, excuse
Oh,
me.
oh, wow.
I said, oh, excuse me. Because I'd be like, I'd be on Fragrantica and I'm like, this looks good. And she'd be like, I don't buy perfume if they don't own a house. I said, oh, excuse me. Um, Gen X really got that feisty attitude that I love. So growing up, I remember just always loved being gifted like body sprays. And I hit this era in my childhood where if you gave me $1, I was going to Bath and Body Works with that. Like constantly, constantly. When I grew up, for some reason, I was always gifted perfumes, but never bought myself perfume. And I kind of started going to Sephora and just started testing the fragrances. And the best way I can describe this to people is I experience perfumes like you would experience art. When I smell a perfume, I can visualize and imagine like what this is reminiscent of, right? I really get attached to perfumes, even if I don't like it. I'm like, I gotta save this for someone or something. Like, if I have a perfume, I can't get rid of it. I'm gonna give it, but I have to keep it, right? Um, and then I kind of just got into like, as I get into my practice, I think of stories like, let's say, a lot of people are familiar with Christianity, that story of Mary sort of wiping Jesus's feet, dipping her hair in oils. But I see certain renditions that suggest that might have been perfume oil. And when we think of a lot of religions at that time, beauty was seen as a virtue close to purity. And I know that as black people, we can kind of understand that through the lens of cleanliness is godliness. But so many ancient cultures and religions believed that like to another level. And that's why different cultures and societies that are hyper religious coincidentally have like a huge market in perfumery. And I think of a lot of like Arabic cultures in which spiritual devotion is very much a pillar of the society, but their history and skill in perfume making is just like astounding. But I never really saw anyone talk about perfume through a sort of like spiritual lens. And kind of like you said, how we're in this Beigeification, I think the spiritual community has already experienced it, and I call it like the granolification, in which like when I got into spirituality, it was very much like if you're a spiritual woman, that means you can only wear certain types of head wraps. You got to dress very simply. You can't microwave your food. You have to eat berries and meditate. And I was like, um, I'm trying to go ghost hunting in the forest with my Balenciaga bag. Mom, like,
And I'm not giving up pork. So
and let me tell you something. That's why I
I'm
like
just
being
saying.
with
I'm
people who
just
don't
saying.
eat pork. Cause I'm like, I'm a
I'm
people
not. I don't have nothing against the pork people. I ain't got nothing against y'all.
nothing against
Assalamu alaikum.
you.
However,
but I'm gonna eat,
I'm
you know what
gonna
I'm
eat me a
saying?
pork chop.
And I was like, I'm very much like, as you can tell, like I'm very big on just like I don't know, like it's given hashtag nerd. Like I just like studying things. I just like reading books. So I just felt this weird disconnect because I'm just like I'm really enjoying like reading mythology and astrology from like an academic lens, and I'm seeing people who are just like sort of regurgitating like online takes, but they're like, oh, I'm the most spiritual because I don't wear makeup and this is that and the third and I don't wear perfumes. And so I was just like, well, no one's talking about it, but I know like you know this, like as a spiritual person, as a conjure woman, there are certain instincts you have and you're just like, no, I'm feeling something because something's calling me out there. And through studying, through doing research, through kind of diving in that lens, like perfumery is such a central, like not even just perfumery, but fragrance is so central to religious, occultic, and spiritual rites. Um, Incense in churches, incense in incantation, whether it's something as familiar as Christianity to even demonology or Greek mythology. Like there are certain scents that will evoke this. When I look at folklore, they're like, well, the scent of this is said to evoke that. And I started talking about it a little. And the moment I start talking about it, like 80 people that I know are like, oh, I'm glad you're talking about it because I've been dying to talk about this, but I didn't think anybody was talking about it. I'm like, well, girl, I was dying to talk about this for a minute. And the moment I started kind of talking about it, so many other people who either have been or waiting to talk about it were like, oh my God, finally. And that's why perfumery is so like my heart because I have so much like so many familiar connections with it. But it's one of those things, kind of like you said, like it's just like why does everything gotta be plain to have value? Like it's kind of like I told someone this. I was like, if the gods come to our realm and they are pleased by offerings of rum and cow and perfumery, does that not mean there's some sort of divine medicine in us consuming those things as well? So give me my barbancourt, give me my steak,
Yes, to the
give me
Bible.
my Joe
Talking about the
Malone,
Bible right now. Yes.
and I'm gonna be on my way. Like,
And that's so. I don't know. I feel like one of the things that has come to me, as we've been talking, is just like the body as an altar, and like your life
yes,
as like the devotion, and like
absolutely.
it's more than just saying the things. It's like truly living the life, and like
Yeah.
there is something to be said. Like I I truly have come to enjoy my beauty ritual and like my fragrance and even my style, like everything, to be like, this is intentional, like,
Hmm.
and I remember a couple of years ago, some brother was trying to come at me about women wearing wigs. I was like, do you understand a head covering? Okay, do you understand the power of a woman covering her head?
That's a head
Like,
covering. And
come on,
mind
can
you,
we
that's
really get
very
into
ancient.
that?
Like we
Like,
have documentation of people covering their head with hair, synthetic or not.
yeah, like there is something there, and it's like you have this, you bought into this like false thing of like, oh, black, especially with black women, black woman wears a wig, she hates, and it's like, brother, man, I'm gonna need you to sit down, because I was like, do you understand what it's like, to the power that a woman could have covering her head, letting her natural hair do whatever it's doing underneath,
Like
right, even in the
resting,
rest,
like
like, and then going out in the world with this other, like, it's a whole transformative thing, and I do feel like there's a lot of envy from people who,
absolutely.
who feel like they can't do that. But like you said, historically, men used to wear wigs and all that other stuff too. So it's like, listen, ain't
Absolutely.
nobody stopping you from your beautification ritual, and your, is nobody stopping you from that. Okay, I
Exactly.
actually would appreciate it. Please,
Literally.
get the lineup, and put on the good cologne. I would like that. There's
Thank
nothing
you.
wrong with that. Like, everybody feels good. Everybody, I don't know. I'm a Venusian. I'm a Libra son. Like,
Oh, so you already know, like, and it makes me laugh too because it's like you said earlier, one of the covert ways I see people like reeling in misogyny whilst trying to play off like they are being like woke is seeing whatever is considered feminine as frivolous. And I say that as simple as the moment that majority women start enjoying something, we consider it frivolous or silly. And when I look at like Venus, the Venus archetype in mythology, that rules over beauty, rituals, and purification. So one of my favorite quotes is when I saw this girl and she said, I like waking up in the morning and putting on my incense, having my matcha, rubbing oils on my skin. I love wearing my perfume and my makeup, not because I think I'm less than without it, but because I've struggled with depression. So waking up in the morning and wearing my makeup and saying my prayers to my incense is a way of telling myself I am safe, I am alive, and I am reviving my spirit. And that really, really spoke to me because I love wearing makeup. I love wearing clothes. I do not feel less without it. I actually feel super, super comfortable in my natural state. But it's my way of saying like this is the juice coming out of the fruit type of thing. And beauty rituals are tied to purification rituals. And that's why, like you said, it's like, you know what? Come over here. Maybe get your lineup. Maybe pour some cologne on your feet. Maybe get a herbal wash in a bath. Maybe wear some genuine gold on your chain and see how you move different in this world because you just did ritual medicine. Just because it's beauty don't make it less. If anything, I would say it's more. Beauty is a technique, but because it's feminine, y'all see it as something frivolous and less than.
Yeah, and everybody responds to beauty. You know, like, come on, let's not. There's whole like classes on design and
Yes.
aesthetics of color and how it
Hello.
influences our moods and all those things. Like all those things mean something. So
Mm-hmm.
it is also it's very refreshing to see someone who revels in a beauty space and a spiritual space and understands the history and the culture of these things and is trying to make it palatable to people and present it in a unique way. That's very
Yeah.
very Venusian of you. You know, very Saturnian of you, even. You know, and
Of
I look at that
course.
devotion is necessary and it's really needed.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna do a lightning round. So we did mention Bratz, we did mention Sabrina. What are some of your other favorite films, or like favorite films and television shows?
Um, I will say I am one of those people that will rewatch something until oblivion. So my favorites will have to be, like I mentioned, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, The Witcher. I have to finish it, but I saw it and I was like, oh, this is about to be my whole world for the next week. Pretty Little Liars. I've probably rewatched the entire thing several times and will continue until I die. Love that showdown. Um, I still watch Bratz. I watch Bratz. And I like some of the old classic Barbie movies because they're kind of like fairy tale retelling. So those are my favorite. I liked Ragnarok, the series on Netflix. That was also my
Okay.
favorite. The Vampire Diaries, American Horror Story, um, and American Gods. I was so slow on American Gods.
I
And
loved American Gods.
let me tell you something. As you can see, I have this spider necklace that I wear, right? It's gold, it blinks, it's just cute. But there was a time where I was like out in the summers and people were like, oh my God, like your spider necklace, like what does it mean? And I'm just like, oh, I'm just, woo girl, Anansi spirits, whatever. And people were like, oh, Anansi from American Gods. And I was like, how do you Anansi as American God? And then people were like, no, Ace, it's a show. You didn't watch it. And I was like, ooh. And then for years, people were like, girl, you need to watch it. I was so slow. And then I watched it and I became obsessed. And then they canceled it. I'm coming for y'all. Stop canceling my shows. But those are my top shows, like, that have my heart.
Okay, okay. What would you say is one of your go-to self-care rituals?
Pretty simple, to be honest. Facial steam, lymphatic drainage, espresso incense, and like some music or prayer.
Espresso incense.
Yeah, oh, espresso and incense.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, well, I do like coffee scents. Like, I love coffee. Like, I don't know. I feel like as I've gotten older, I fully appreciate a good
Love
cup
it.
of coffee. Like, I love my coffee in the morning.
Right?
Um, oh, are there any upcoming projects or anything that you have in the works that you want to share with the collective?
I will say that there is a possibility of us seeing a revival of the Hoodoo Swim series that will be coming back. And because I still get comments on old videos from like 2 years ago, and people are like, not to bother you, but like, where's part two? And
Loyal to it.
I'm like energy. So definitely that. I also know, for those who know, back in the day, we were constantly doing lives and spaces. So just having things that I call like just community moments where we were just gathering like 4 or 5 or even 20 spiritualists. And I feel like we're missing that. I want to bring that back. I've already started. So definitely just seeing more either platforms, lives where we're just, not just me, but like other spiritualists to have like those community moments. So that's what I would say for the near future for sure.
Okay. And where can people find you? Where are you at on the net these days?
Under your floorboards. Just kidding. You can find me on. I'm trying to think now because I'm everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Hip Hop and Hoodoo. You can find me on Blue Sky, Hoodoo Regina George. You can find me on Tumblr, Hoodoo Vogue, and I think that's where I'm at for now.
Okay. Okay. And this has been great. I had such a
This
time.
was such a key. I love this. Thank you so much for having me. Like, I
Oh no,
love
this is
it.
fantastic. This was lovely. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so
Thank
much for sharing
you.
your perspective and your wisdom with the collective and your beauty.
Thank
This has
you.
been so fabulous. And we're gonna talk about some other stuff off air. But for now, thank you so much, Ace of Hip Hop and Hoodoo. Again, this is Nikki Buchanan. You have been listening to the How to Be Magical podcast, and this has been Glam Goddesses and Y2K, the cinematic world of hip hop and hoodoo. And we thank her kindly for coming on and sharing her beauty and her essence with us today. And as always, keep it black, keep it beautiful, keep it magical, and peace.